Hello, you beautiful, beautiful people. Happy New Year. Welcome to Law and Looks, where I smoosh together law and makeup to talk about some of the more interesting or fun cases I learned about in law school while I do my makeup. Quick disclaimer. Nothing I say can or should be construed as legal advice. I cannot give you legal advice. If you do need legal advice, please obtain your own attorney and seek counsel from them on any particular matter. Oh no, I got some makeup on my cat ears. Oh well. Okay, so today's case I actually did not learn about in law school. So I was perusing the Twitter. I saw a tweet where basically, I can't find it now, but somebody was like, went to law school to learn why like Americans are so litigious, and then like 3 months into law school, now I'm super litigious, or something like that. It was talking about how Americans and people in the United States just sue a lot. Like, you know, it's commonplace to hear the phrase, so sue me. Like, you don't like what I'm doing, so sue me. Like, whatever, right? And there's this idea that Americans sue each other way more than people in other countries. We're just extra litigious. And a lot of those lawsuits are frivolous lawsuits. Like, they're dumb, they're stupid, right? Like, you know, why would you sue someone for hot coffee, for example, which is the case we're going to talk about today. And you may have heard this case. This was a case that was super popular and talked about a lot in the 90s and I want to say early 2000s. And it was one of those cases where it's like, yeah, why would you sue about that's dumb. Like, of course coffee's hot. Why would you sue someone for making you hot coffee and then you burned yourself? Obviously, if you pour hot coffee on yourself, you're gonna get burned. So, let's get into it. How do I do makeup? I forgot. What is this hot coffee case? Well, it's all about McDonald's. McDonald's was the big corporation being sued here for pouring hot coffee. Poor McDonald's, right? The McDonald's hot coffee case, otherwise known as Liebeck versus McDonald's restaurants. This is a case that sounded in torts, which is basically a civil wrong. And we've talked about torts before in the Paul's Graph case, but this case specifically was torts and a products liability case. And products liability is basically when a manufacturer, supplier, distributor, etc. of a particular good is held responsible for injuries to a consumer. So let's set up our facts, shall we? We have Miss Stella Liebeck. She is a 79-year-old woman and she's out with her grandson and they roll on through the McDonald's drive-thru where Miss Liebeck gets herself a coffee. Now, this case happened in early 1992, February of 1992, so her coffee was like 49 cents, which is ridiculous to me. I want 49-cent coffee. Well, actually, I get too many syrups and things in it, so my coffee, even back then, would probably end up being like $3 or $4 anyway. Whatever, it's fine. Don't be ashamed of your Starbucks order ever. Anyway. So Miss Liebeck gets her coffee and her grandson pulls into the parking lot of the McDonald's so that she can put some cream and sugar into her coffee. Her grandson's car didn't have any cup holders. So Miss Liebeck did that thing, you know that thing we all do when like you have nowhere to put your drink, you kind of like hold it in between your knees. Like she just like kind of put it in between her knees and she's like, it's fine. I'll just hold it here and put my creamer and sugar in as I hold it, right? So as Miss Liebeck is holding on to her coffee in between her knees, she opens the lid like towards her. And as she does that, the coffee spills all over her. Miss Liebeck is wearing cotton gray sweatpants. Actually, I don't know if they were gray, but she's wearing cotton sweatpants. And because of the material it soaks up a whole bunch of the hot coffee and sticks to her skin. Now, you know that when you get something hot spilled on you, right, the first thing you do is like you shed your clothes because your clothes are soaking in the hot liquid that's making it stick to your skin. So that hot coffee is sticking to her skin via her sweatpants. The coffee was so hot that it resulted in third-degree burns within like 3 seconds, which I don't know about you, but if I get something hot spilled on me, I don't know if I'll be able to take off whatever clothes I'm wearing to get the hot stuff off within 3 seconds. But the coffee was so hot, it burned her and gave her third-degree burns, which is the worst level of burns you can get. Like first, second, third degree burns are like the worst, awful, just like the worst level of burns you can get. And because she was holding the coffee between her knees, all of her burns were on her thighs, like butt, and groin area. Like, ow! That's horrifying. Like, the coffee is so hot, it just burns. If it burns your skin, right, wouldn't it burn your mouth and your throat going down? Like, anyway, poor Miss Liebeck is suffering these third-degree burns. She's in the hospital for, I think, 8 days, and she has to have, like, multiple skin grafts. It's absolutely awful just reading these stories. There are pictures. I'm not going to put them here. They're pretty graphic. If you want, you can Google them. I don't want to subject you guys to that right here and now, but like the injuries are like pretty bad. Oh, also, quick intermission. I'm using the Baily Sarian Venice Fling palette today. So she's in the hospital for 8 days. She loses 20% of her body weight while she's in the hospital. After she gets out of the hospital, she needs about 3 weeks of round-the-clock care, and then for 2 years after that, she's like physically disabled and she has permanent disfigurement and scars from this incident. After all this, of course, Miss Liebeck is going to try to get some money out of McDonald's. They're a big corporation, they have deep pockets. They can probably help settle her medical expenses, which ran about, I think, in the ballpark of $20,000. So she sought $20,000 from McDonald's to be like, hey, like, your coffee burned me, can you give me a little bit of money? Help me out here. McDonald's offered a grand total of $800. Should really wash my makeup brushes. Oh well, I'll do that after this. But that's our main factual background. Miss Liebeck got coffee, got burned really badly, had a lot of medical expenses, needed skin grafts and stuff, sought $20,000 from McDonald's before trial. McDonald's offered $800. So onto the trial now. Evidence presented showed that McDonald's, and a lot of other establishments honestly, sold their coffee at a temperature, like it's company policy. McDonald's had company policy to sell their coffee between 180 to 190 degrees. Ms. Liebeck's attorneys had experts testify that coffee at that temperature would result in up to third-degree burns in as quick as 3 seconds. Coffee that was sold at 160, or coffee that was at 160 degrees Fahrenheit, I believe, could give you third-degree burns in a matter of 12 to 15 seconds. And Miss Liebeck's case was essentially that McDonald's can sell coffee at a lower temperature that doesn't result in these excessive burns and injuries due to their hot coffee. Now, the investigation and the trial also revealed evidence that McDonald's had gotten 700 or so other complaints about injuries from hot coffee, and they would essentially just settle those out. McDonald's, on the other hand, argued that they sold coffee this hot because most of their consumers who go through the drive-thru, as Miss Liebeck had done, were commuters. So they would get their coffee and then they would want their coffee to still be hot by the time they got to their destination and could drink it. However, evidence showed that McDonald's knew that most of their consumers coming through their drive-thru instantly drank their coffee as they were driving. They didn't wait until they got to their destination to drink the coffee. So that justification for having coffee that was that hot wasn't very convincing, at least not to a jury. Another justification they had was that selling coffee at this temperature is industry standard. It's customary. Now, in tort law, generally, just because something is industry standard doesn't necessarily mean that you can't be liable for it. Just because something is industry standard doesn't mean that it's safe necessarily. I don't think that came up too much in this case, but it's just something that kind of raised a flag for me while I was researching. Anyway, so McDonald's is saying that most of our consumers are commuters and this is the industry standard. McDonald's wasn't very convincing to a jury. The jury was actually pretty taken by Miss Liebeck's story, and they were kind of mad at McDonald's. Like, they'd gotten 700 complaints, and McDonald's still hadn't done anything about this hot coffee. Like, people are getting burned, sometimes extremely severely, and McDonald's had basically just said, you know what, 700 people is not enough people for us to change our policies and the way that we do things, which, like, okay, you do you, I guess, but that's kind of messed up. So, in the end, the jury awarded Miss Liebeck, like, millions in damages. How much was it exactly? Over $2.7 million. So, let's break that down. So, the jury first awarded Miss Liebeck her medical expenses and what we call the compensatory damages, so like what she felt like she was owed to make her whole. And they used something called comparative negligence. So this case happened in New Mexico, which is a comparative negligence state. And basically what that means is when you sue somebody, if the jury finds that you were at fault for whatever percentage, your damages are reduced by that much. So the jury found that Miss Liebeck was 20% at fault and McDonald's was 80% at fault, and they found the total compensatory damages to be $200,000. So they awarded Miss Liebeck $160,000 in compensatory damages. The jury also awarded Miss Liebeck $2.7 million in punitive damages. Punitive damages are basically where you want to punish the defendant. You want to say what you did was a bad thing and, like, we're making you pay for it. Literally. They got this $2.7 figure from Miss Liebeck's lawyer. He basically gave the jury a suggestion that, hey, maybe you award punitive damages in the amount equal to 2 days worth of coffee sales for McDonald's. You know, like that'll hurt them because that only seems fair. And the jury was like, you know what? You're right. Because like I said, the jury was kind of mad at McDonald's that they were selling this, like, coffee that was injuring, like, causing a lot of people actual pain and misery. So the jury awarded her, like, a ton of money, right? And the judge reduced the amount of her damages that she ultimately could get through the trial. Judges can do this. It's called additor or remitter, where basically the judge will say, I don't think you were awarded enough, so they'll increase the amount of damages you get, or generally, I feel like this, actually I don't know which one happens more, just anecdotally, I feel like I've heard more cases have remitter than additor, but the judge will say, no, the jury awarded you too much money, we're going to remit some, and they'll lower the amount of damages that you get. So the judge ended up reducing the punitive damages to $480,000, which is kind of like treble damages, 3 times the amount of the compensatory damages. So of course this case was appealed because McDonald's was like, I don't want to pay this money. Miss Liebeck was like, I should get the full amount that the jury gave me. Why did the judge reduce my total damages that I was awarded? But before the case could be decided on appeal, Miss Liebeck and McDonald's came to a settlement of a little bit less than $60,000. I believe the exact amount is undisclosed. Now, you could be asking yourself, well, why did Miss Liebeck settle with McDonald's for less than $60,000 when she was getting over $60,000 at the trial court, even $600,000. Why did Miss Liebeck settle for less than $600,000 with McDonald's when she was getting over $600,000 even at the trial court with the judge's reduction in her damages? There are a couple of reasons that could have happened. Sometimes it's just strategy. It costs more to keep the litigation going, or this is the best you're gonna get. McDonald's may have moved closer to the middle. They may have gotten something else that wasn't damages that they wanted. For example, Miss Liebeck's attorney after this case defended the case by saying that McDonald's serves their coffee colder now, so it's not 180 degrees and can cause third-degree burns. Some anecdotal evidence and non-scientific studies basically have shown that McDonald's does still serve its coffee at really, really high temperatures, and instead of cooling, or instead of serving the coffee at a cooler temperature, McDonald's and most other places will instead just have like a really big warning that the coffee is hot, which after this case, a lot of places started implementing that, where like, you know, it says like caution hot, or like hot beverage or hot coffee or whatever. And people would make fun of that as well, like, yeah, I'm getting hot coffee, obviously it's going to be hot. But sometimes if you look at those warnings, they'll tell you what temperature the coffee is served at, or it'll say like, you know, caution hot may cause severe burns. That's what they're talking about. It can give you really bad third-degree burns that can result in you needing skin grafts and extensive surgery. So before I learned about this case in undergrad, actually, I would also have that kind of knee-jerk reaction of like, yeah, duh, I know coffee's hot. But after learning about this case, I'm like much more appreciative of the warning and where it comes from, you know, kind of what people had to go through. Of course, it is just like big corporations covering their butts, but like, that's what they do. But this case is kind of considered the epitome of frivolous litigation. One news source called it the poster child of excessive lawsuits, although people in the legal community were of the opinion that this was actually a pretty meaningful lawsuit and important for torts and like tort liability and product liability. It's thought that a lot of the media representation of this case, there was a lot of misinformation spread. So media outlets and just like people who talked about this case would report that Miss Liebeck was driving while she opened the coffee, and that, you know, it was kind of her fault that she only suffered very minor burns, because how badly can, you know, hot coffee hurt you? Turns out pretty badly. And it's thought that a lot of this misrepresentation that was spread mainly by media outlets was because of pressure from big corporations and lobbyists, where they didn't want the full story to get out. And as the case went on, and as the story has been retold and just entered into American culture, and even to an extent like global culture, it just comes off as that frivolous lawsuit, like, oh yeah, that one lady who sued over hot coffee, and you kind of just dismiss it as being kind of dumb, when in reality there's so much more to the story. and it's quite the opposite of dumb. There was also a documentary that was released by HBO, I believe. I forget what year it came out, but it's called Hot Coffee. They talk a lot about this case and some similar cases, and basically how these cases play into big businesses and corporations lobbying for tort reform. You know, lobbying in ways that are not great for the consumer. Specifically, the documentary goes into the tort reform where big corporations spread these misconceptions and misinformation. I don't know why I keep sugarcoating it. They're lies. They're spreading lies about the case and about what actually happened. In this case and in other similar cases, to promote tort reform and say, look, these are frivolous cases and look how much money the jury awarded these individuals, when in reality a majority of the money that the jury awarded in Ms. Liebeck's case was punitive damages. But instead, the lobbying efforts will say it's ridiculous to try and make corporations pay almost $3 million for somebody's medical expenses, which that's not what happened at all. I just get like so heated over this case. And over the years, people will report on it again and again and kind of try to recontextualize it, because as time has gone on, this case has kind of developed its own truth in the way that people talk about how frivolous it is and how it literally just gets summarized to, you know, 1 or 2 sentences where like this lady sued McDonald's over hot coffee and McDonald's ends up coming out as the victim, which not in 2021. Big corporations are no longer the victim. We will not be supporting that narrative. So next time you see a warning of a hot beverage when you go out and order your Starbucks or your local coffee shop, support small businesses, you know, just stop and appreciate for a moment Miss Liebeck and this case. Oh, I forgot to do my mascara. Miss Liebeck passed away in early 2000s, I believe. What day? Yeah, Miss Liebeck passed away on August 5th, 2004. She was 91 years old. Her daughter remarked to the local news station that, you know, the case, you know, the media attention and everything, and of course the injuries that she sustained definitely took its toll on Miss Liebeck and the whole family. I'm sure the grandson and the daughter who took care of Miss Liebeck after the incident, which is definitely sad, and why I think it's important to remember Miss Liebeck and her full story and keep in mind all of the facts of this case and not just shrink it to, you know, a frivolous lawsuit about hot coffee, because the true victim here was Miss Liebeck and she suffered a lot. So maybe just something to keep in mind when you go and get your next coffee. Or, you know, you could also be like me and only drink iced coffee, even in the dead of winter. Hair's so poofy again. And that, my friends, is Liebeck versus McDonald's restaurants, also known as the McDonald's hot coffee case or just the hot coffee case. Thank you so very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe if you have not already done so, but you know, no pressure to do either. I'm just very, very happy that you made it all the way to the end of my video. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I will see you all next time. Bye!